Do you have any advice for individuals who are trying to become writers?
Okay. Well, I get asked this advice. I get to ask this advice sometimes, and I have a couple of different answers that I give.
Okay.
Sometimes I tell people that writing is a curse, and that you should not wish it on your worst enemy. And really, what I'm trying to say by that is that once this gets into your blood and gets into your brain, it never goes away. And so you have to be happy with the fact that you might write and put your heart into something and it won't be widely accepted, that you will never perhaps make a living off of that passion. And that passion may be universally panned by people around you who don't think what you're doing meets whatever standard they have.
Right.
This is the kind of world we live in, where people, especially on the internet, will say whatever they want because they have that protection.
Yep.
So, when I give that answer, it's usually to a young kid who wants to write, and they have that glimmer in their eyes, and everyone else will tell them, "Oh, well, you just as Neil Gaiman said, put one word after the other until you reach the end." And he's very encouraging about being a writer.
Right.
I want to make sure that they understand that it's not all butterflies, daisies, and unicorns.
Right. Absolutely.
But if they get past that initial warning, I usually say you just got to keep at it. That like Neil says, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not really even a race. You're not competing against anybody else. You're racing against yourself just to see if you can make it to the end.
Right.
And so keeping at it, even when, and especially when, you feel the most disheartened, that no one cares about what you're writing about, that you don't even care what you're writing about, put some of that emotion into the story. And that will make it more alive. I'd also suggest that you do not share your story only with people who are very close to you before you go further down the road. Like if you were to publish books or what have you, don't just talk to people who are really close friends, because they won't tell you the truth. They will tell you that everything is great, and they won't give you honest feedback. Show it to some people who are assholes and find out what they think.
Right.
And honestly, take both versions of that feedback, and probably somewhere in the middle is where the truth is.
Right.
So you got to be, cognizant of that. There is no bad feedback except for feedback that has no context. If somebody tells you that your book or your story sucks, and they cannot tell you why, then they're just a moron. If they tell you that it's great, and they can't tell you why, then they're also a moron. You need to have information to let you know what is good, what is bad.
Right.
And honestly, that is sometimes, even bad feedback is great, specifically because there are portions of my story, this story specifically, that are intended to frustrate the reader, because it frustrates the narrator. And if that emotion isn't connected, then I've done my job poorly.
Right.
So if somebody tells me that they did not like stuff in the story because it was frustrating, then I've actually met my goal of broadcasting that frustration. Now, if that turned them off the story entirely, then that's another thing. But the last and final thing I always tell everybody is that you must get an editor. You must do that, because there's a tricky thing about human minds, and that is that if I write a block of text and I go over it, I might find some spelling errors, I might find some grammatical errors, but my brain knows what the words are supposed to be, and so I will miss errors, and they're usually the stupidest errors in the world, but my brain just skips over them. You need somebody who is detail-oriented and focused on words that can help you get the right words on the page.
Right.
I released a version of Racked before this one, and it was terrible. And it was because I didn't have a real editor. I had
Mhm.
some friends who were giving me feedback and trying to find grammar problems and so on, and they did a great job for not really having much experience.
Right.
But then I connected with Morgan, who's my current editor,
Mhm.
and she's been rock solid as far as that stuff is concerned.
Mhm.
There are still some typos and still some things which end up in the final manuscript, and usually I go back and as they're reported to me, I go and fix them and send them out there.
Mhm.
But you have to have that editor to make your stuff good.
Right.
There's a book called APE, which
Mhm.
stands for Author, Publisher, Entrepreneur, and I believe it's by a guy by the name of Guy Kawasaki, I think is
Mhm.
how he says his last name, and he's been a writer for technology stuff for over a decade. He used to be the evangelist for Apple's products back
Mhm.
in the 80s and stuff.
Mhm.
And this book really breaks down how to be an author and what to look for, how to publish your own stuff if you're doing self-publishing, and how to be the entrepreneur at the end to market and connect with your audience.
Mhm.
And anyone who's interested in writing can read the author part and ignore the rest of the publisher stuff, perhaps.
Right.
But anybody who's interested in self-publishing really should read the entire book
Mhm.
because it has some really, really valuable stuff in there, including just how to properly prep all your files.
Mhm.
So, again, if that's something that people are interested in, I always try to mention that book specifically. There's tons of books out there, but I find that this one's probably the best.
Yeah, but your advice is basically, I mean, you can basically remove writer and just put in creator.
Yeah.
Really, it really boils down to that, because this is what I tell all the indie developers that I interact with, especially those who hand me a game and think that this game is amazing. Everyone tells them it's amazing. There's nothing wrong with it, and I'm like, then there is something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Because my immediate question is, who's told you that?
Yeah.
Is it your friends or your family? Because they're very bad people. I don't want me, but at the same time, it also depends. For me, it really depends on the audience. If it's I don't want to say like an older gentleman or female, but someone who is,
You getting ageist and sexist now here, Charlie?
No, I'm not. No, basically, if it's an individual who's like in their 20s or something like that, then I feel like I could say a little bit more, be a little bit more harsh, a little bit more critical.
Yeah.
As comparison to a kid who's got that starry-eyed look in the face, like, I want to make video games. Then I got to be, you've got to. I don't want to
I disagree with you. I think that being a creative person
Mhm.
and putting yourself out there, creating anything, books,
Right.
music, games, whatever, movies, anything,
Mhm.
you need to have a thick skin.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
And the people who are never told that their stuff needs work, not even your stuff sucks,
Right.
whatever. Again,
Right.
if you can't give context for why something
Absolutely.
is bad, you don't deserve to talk about it.
Right.
But they need to be able to do that. And here's the reason why: is because they need to realize that yes, they're creating content,
Mhm.
and yes, this is their baby, what have you.
Right.
But when people are talking about, and perhaps even negatively about their baby,
Mhm.
it usually is in an effort, in some meager way, to make their process improve.
Right.
And
Okay.
if their skin is too thin and they take everything personally, they will never ever get to the point where they actually see how, okay, this is potentially a problem.
Yeah.
How can I address this? Or
Right.
what am I doing already to make this concern better?
Right.
Because
Right.
sometimes these things are completely baseless. Like I had someone recently tell me that they were frustrated with the second book because the entire mystery of the story wasn't solved by the end of the second book. And my thought is, this is an ongoing series
Right.
that has a lot of unknowns and mysteries involved in it.
Mhm.
I'm not going to just hand you the solutions
Right.
by the second book.
Right.
So that's great feedback. First of all, I want to
Right.
say that it's great feedback.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's baseless
Mhm.
because I'm not going to do what that person wanted me to do with the storyline.
Right.
There's no way I could make them happy if that was their expectation.
Mhm.
But they enjoyed the rest of the story, so I was able to get good things out of the feedback that they were talking about. But again, there's not a way to make everyone happy,
Right.
and sometimes you have to measure the feedback you get with what your desired end product is.
Right. Right. And I think that the other thing that you have when you're dealing with something that you're passionate about and you have to have that thick skin, you also have to understand that the negative feedback, be it constructive or not, is going to be the louder of the two. Because a lot of people, if they like the book, it's or product or whatever, it's funny. They're less likely to actually say anything about it because they enjoyed it. They're like, I liked it. And
the average person, the last study I read, the average person who doesn't like something will tell 14 people.
Yeah.
The average person who likes something will tell 2 to 3 people, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so it is much more likely that the negatives will be spread, which is one of the reasons why your job as a content creator is to beat the bushes so that the people who love your product will come out and talk about it.
Right.
You know, put reviews up on Amazon or Goodreads if you're an author. Go out to Amazon and put stuff up for games or Board Game Geek if it's a board game. You know, you have to constantly try and nurture that positive thing, and that's just the nature of the beast, really.
Oh yeah, absolutely.